Hello students, now we will start with new topic, that is theories of evolution. In theories of evolution, we have four different types of theories. One is Lamarchism or Lamarck theory of evolution. Second one is Darwinism or Darwin theory of evolution. Third one is mutation theory given by Hugo de Vries. And fourth one is Neo-Darwinism or synthetic theory of evolution, that is also called as modern theory. There are four different theories that explain evolution. First one, Darwin theory of natural selection, which we also call as Darwinism. Third one, mutation theory, given by Hugo de Vries. Fourth one, modern theory of evolution, it is also called as Neo-Darwinism. It is also called as synthetic theory of evolution. Lamarckism or Lamarck theory of evolution, it is given by Lamarck, Jean-Baptiste Lamarck. Next, Darwin theory of natural selection is given by Darwin, and mutation theory is given by Hugo de Vries. This modern theory of evolution or neo-Darwinism or synthetic theory of evolution, it is given by a group of scientists who have done research on the Darwinism, Lamarckism and mutation theory. Later, the new concept, modern theory of evolution, was given. Now we will start with Lamarckism. First theory of evolution is Lamarckism. Lamarckism theory given by Lamarck. This theory explains that, or it is based on the physical changes that happened in the body parts or the organs of the organism during its lifetime. So we can give a definition for this as, it is theory of evolution based on physical changes that happened during its lifetime. Lamarck, along with Traviranus, coined the terms like biology. Next, he also coined the term invertebrates. He also coined the term Annelida. The term biology was coined by Lamarck along with Traviranus, another scientist who worked along with him. The book written by Jean-Baptiste Lamarck is Philosophic Zoologic. Book is Philosophic Zoologic. Next, Lamarck work is majorly based on the fossils that are present and also the living fossils of horses. Work is based on fossils of horses and also living fossils. Next, Lamarck has given some of the postulates which are also called as the first law, second law, third law, etc. We will read all these postulates one by one. The first postulate or the first law is based on need of the organism. According to Lamarck, as initial giraffes are majorly having a short neck when they are living in the African grasslands. But when in course of time period or during the seasonal changes, when these grasslands has been converted into deserts, then there is scarcity of the grass or food material. Then giraffes started depending on the tall plants. In that process, giraffes started elongating their neck. So, basing on need of the organism in the organ in the sense, basing on the need for the food material. So, initially, short-necked giraffes started extending their neck to reach the greenery of the tall plants. Next, his work means his postulates are also dealt with inheritance. Inheritance means during this time period when for the food material the giraffe started stretching its neck, the same character which it has attained during its lifetime has been inherited to the next generation. That is the another postulate or the second law given by Lamarckism. The acquired character was inherited to offsprings. Next, another one or the third type of law which is based on use and disuse of the organ. It means that for some time period, if any particular organ is not means necessary basing on searching of the food or during its lifetime, then slowly that organ got converted into vestigial, and in the next generation that organ is completely vestigial or it got disappeared in the next offsprings. Here we can take few examples like means wings of ostrich, etc., and also the wings of ducks, etc., which are considered as flightless birds, and hind limbs of the snakes. Based on a requirement to use a particular organ, the existence of the organ happened. Here we can take some of the examples like hind limbs of snakes, since snakes are crawling organisms or animals. Wings of duck and ostrich. So, when wings have become vestigial in case of duck, duck has developed the web-toed feet. Has developed web-toed feet for swimming in water. Next, there are criticisms of Lamarckism also. That criticism was given by August Weismann. Disproved by August Weismann in 1890. What August Weismann has done, he has conducted the cutting of the tail, which is nothing but somatoplasmic content of the rat, for 20 generations continuously, and observed whether the next generation, means 21st generation, will get the tailless rats or not. But even after 20 generations, when he kept on continuously cutting the tails of the rat, he did not see any of the tailless rats. So that August Weismann has concluded that the change in the somatoplasm did not show any change or did not show any mutations or any changes in the germplasm or the reproductive organs of the particular organism. So August Weismann gave conclusion. So first we will write about the experiment. Conducted cutting tail experiment of rats for 20 generations. Approximately we can take, it might be 15 or 20 generations. But the later generation showed the tail. Then what will be the conclusion? Conclusion is somatoplasm will not show any change in germplasm. Somatoplasmic changes will not change germplasm, because we know that germ cells are responsible for formation of male and female gametes, which later on give rise to the new organism or the zygote. Later, scientists have made some of the modifications and gave other theory, that is neo-Lamarckism. But here, according to Lamarck, he said that the short-necked giraffe have elongated their neck in course of evolution. But there is no proof for that, and there is no genetic linkage for the theory given by Lamarck. So this theory was disapproved, or this is not accepted by the later scientists. This is about Lamarckism. Next is Darwinism or Darwin theory of natural selection. Here, in case of Darwinism or Darwin theory of natural selection, Darwin has postulated that any type of individual during its lifetime, based on the availability of the food grains and also availability of the habitat for its survival, the existence of organism has taken place. And also another point is nature has selected only the dominant species. So majorly Darwin has concentrated on these postulates. So Darwinism is majorly based on the natural selection of organism to survive. Second one, Darwin was inspired by one of the book called as Essay on Population, which is written by other scientist, is Malthus. So, Darwin was inspired by the book Essay on Population written by Malthus. Darwin has written after his voyage to South America. The book name is Origin of Species. Book written by Darwin is Origin of Species. In this he explained many different his observations. Example like about the finches that are seen in the Galapagos Islands, and also many different other examples he included, like survival of the fittest, means in his observation Darwin has explained us about the adaptive radiation that is exhibited by the finches that are seen in Galapagos Islands. Next, he also gave some of the postulates. The first one is over reproduction. What Darwin is telling us is that organisms, most of the organisms take some duration for their reproduction, and based on the environment that the next generation is produced, it will be producing less number of offsprings or more number of offsprings. For suppose, organisms, some of the organisms are producing more and more number of their offsprings, because in nature all of them may not survive. Some of them may be taken by the predators, or some of them may not be having the stamina to exist in the new environment. So at least to protect the next race or next generation, some types of organisms are producing many number of the offsprings. Overproduction means some organisms produce many offsprings such that at least few will be survived, means their race or their same type of species will be existed in the next generations also. Few will be survived in evolution. We will see some of the organisms which are taking different timings for their reproduction. For suppose if you take Paramecium. Paramecium takes 24 hours for one complete longitudinal or transverse division, means one binary fission. Take 24 hours for reproduction. It can be asexual, that is binary fission or transverse fission, or it can also be the conjugation method. Another example we can take, that is bacteria. For suppose if you take E. coli, normally bacteria takes 20 minutes for its binary fission. It is said that E. coli takes 18 minutes for its binary fission. Another example is yeast. Yeast, for its budding method of asexual reproduction, yeast takes 90 minutes of time. 90 minutes for budding. So this is about over reproduction. Another one, struggle for existence. All the organisms may not get the sufficient food that is available in that particular habitat. And also the space availability. If the number of organisms are more in a particular area, then there will be less space for the next coming new generations or the existing organisms itself. So in such conditions, there will be scarcity of the food and also scarcity of the space for animal or organisms' survival. In this struggle for existence, there is competition for the space and food. So the competition for the space and food, it is of two different types. Is of two different competitions. One is intra-specific competition. Second one is inter-specific competition. Intra-specific competition means the competition between same types of species. For suppose, the competition between goat and goat for the grass. The competition between sheep and sheep for the grass. The competition between cow and cow for the grass. So, this is competition between same types of organisms. Second one, interspecific competition. Here we will write one example. Example between sheep and sheep. Another one, interspecific competition. Here we can take example between two different herbivores. For suppose, horses eat grass, cows eat grass, sheep eat grass, goats eat grass, and buffaloes eat grass. So we can compare horses and sheep or cows and goats. So the competition between two different types of organisms for same type of source of the food is called as interspecific competition between horse and cow. So competition between different organisms. So this is about struggle for existence. Next one, variations and heredity. Darwin also said that in course of during the evolution, there are many changes in the living organisms. Means they have showed many phenotypic variations, and those phenotypic variations have been inherited to the next offsprings. Organisms showed many phenotypic variations that are inherited. So this can be a type of adaptive radiation also. Means at any particular point, for suppose there is availability of food like grains for the birds. So basing on the type of the grain, the shape of the beak has been changed. Such type of changes are also considered as variations. So he has seen many different types of finches with different shaped beaks there, and he concluded that that is because of the availability of different types of grains, and also some birds depended on vegetative means food, means eating the early greenery leaves, small leaves and small grains like that. But some birds depended on the large sized grains. Then automatically the beak shape will be large in size. So he has given one best example about the finches in the Galapagos Islands. Next, survival of the fittest. It means that survival of the fittest actually is the term given by Herbert Spencer. But Darwin has taken that words and he incorporated into his Darwinism theory. So the term is given by Herbert Spencer. What it is telling is only the organism that is having dominant nature to survive in the nature will exist. The recessive charactered organisms will perish. This is the concept given by regarding survival of the fittest by Darwin. So it states that only the dominant featured organisms survive and the remaining will perish. It also means that nature selects only the dominant and tolerating organisms to exist in its nature. Next. So he also said that there are organisms that are struggling in the nature for food, for habitat. They are showing many variations by adapting to the changing environment, and they are being survived in the nature. And those organisms have transferred the exact characteristic features to the next offsprings. So that is explained as origin of new species by the Darwin regarding his studies. There are many criticisms also regarding Darwinism. So, criticisms of Darwinism. What are those? Darwin has explained about inheritance of small variations. He explained about small variations. For suppose in Galapagos Islands, just one single point he has taken, that is change means differences in the beak shape. That is also one of the variation. It is true and it is inherited, but he did not find out what are other types of variations seen in the birds. Second one will be the existence of vestigial organs. As Darwin has said that the variations that are caused are inherited to the next generations and all are functional, then why the vestigial organs are existed? This is one of the question that is not explained by Darwin. Criticism is why vestigial organs are still existed. Next, third type of criticism is degeneration of a particular character. For suppose if you take the wings of kiwi, those are degenerated. Now kiwi has become flightless bird. So why such type of degenerating changes has occurred in the organisms? That was also not explained by Darwin. So third criticism is degeneration of particular acquired characters. Last criticism is he did not explain about discontinuous variations. Discontinuous variations are seen in organisms. Why? What is meant by discontinuous variation? Discontinuous variation, also called as qualitative variation, in which one particular character, it is not influenced by the changing environment. For suppose blood group, it will not change, but the skin color of human being, it may get little bit change phenotypically when person is exposed for more time under the sun. But coming to blood group, it is not showing any of the changes, though the person is exposed to many environmental changes or seasonal changes. So that was not explained by Darwin. Here, Darwin did not link up all his postulates and all his contributions with that of genetic studies. So, like Lamarchism was not accepted by the scientists, Darwinism was also not accepted by the scientists because he did not explain the linkage of the postulates given by Darwin with that of genetical studies. So Darwinism was not accepted. Next we will see about another theory, that is mutation theory, which is given by Hugo de Vries. Hugo de Vries has given the mutation theory to explain the course of evolution. Next, his work was on evening primrose, which is called as Enothera lamarckiana. It is commonly called as evening primrose. Evening primrose is a heterozygous type of plant, means it is showing many variations in the size of the flower and color of the flower. It means that in one single plant we can see different colored flowers with different sizes also. What are the salient features given by Hugo de Vries? He said that all the F1 generation are resembling the parents. Yes, it is correct. Even according to Mendel's contributions also, F1 generation mostly are resembling only the phenotypic characters of the parents, not of the genotypes. Because if you take parents which are dominant with homozygous dominant genes crossed with homozygous recessive genes, in F1 generation we are getting heterozygous, but phenotypically all F1 generation are representing the parents only. So this is correct. Next, mutations are the raw materials of evolution. Because of the changes in the allele forms of the genes only, mutations will occur. And mutations are nothing but the sudden chromosomal inheritable characters of the alleles or the genes. So these are majorly considered. Mutations means the changes in the chromosomes or the genes is responsible for variations in the organism that we are telling as the evolution, which has showed many variations in the organisms. Next, mutations does not resolve abnormal or normal characters. It means that when a mutation has occurred, means sudden chromosomal changes has occurred in the chromosome, it is not trying to solve the problem existed in the genotype of the organism. So there is some controversy regarding this. Mutations does not resolve abnormal characters. Some way it is correct. It is not making the organism to be normal. or it is not, if any mutated disease or disorder has been arised in the organism, again the mutations are not resolving or converting the organism to normal condition. Some way it will be correct. Next, mutations are inheritable. Some types of mutations are heritable, some types of mutations are not inheritable. That we have learned in Principles of Inheritance and Variations chapter. Next, useful mutations are selected by the nature. Useful mutations are really selected by the nature. We can say that some organisms, to adopt or exist in the nature, it has converted its allele forms or the genes into dominant type, or even in the recessive form also it has adopted to the changing environmental conditions. Then such types of organisms are only existed or selected by the nature. So this point is also correct. Next, accumulations of variations produced new species. Without accumulations of alleles in different patterns, the variations will not exist. So this salient feature can also be considered as true. What are the evidences that are supporting Hugo-de Vries' mutation theory of evolution? First one, mutations are actual source of variations. Not only mutations, we cannot give the complete term as mutations, because mutations are not the normal things. Mutations means there are some chromosomal, genetical, allelic variations or changes. Means the genes that are normally present in one position may be shifted to another one. That may lead to the abnormal condition of the living organism. So mutations are the actual source of variations. This is correct. But this is not always accepted by the nature or the organism to survive in the evolution. Next, he explained both progressive and retrogressive evolutions. What is meant by progressive? If we recall the NCERT chapters like Bryophyta, Pteridophyta, Gymnosperms, Angiosperms, like there is a process of sequential development of the plant species to evolve into higher grade organisms, that is angiosperms. From the Bryophyta, there is a gradual development in the type of the plant species. So that is called as progressive evolution. That is best for the nature till now that we have seen. What is meant by retrogressive evolution? Retrogressive evolution is completely opposite to that of progressive evolution. If you take humans, previously humans used to have the larger sized body, and also their energetic levels are little bit more comparing to the present living organisms. Means some way the previous existing characteristic features have been decreased. Previously appendix and nictitating membrane, those are considered to be useful for appendix for cellulose digestion based on the food habits. But now those have become vestigial. Means the organs have been decreased their structure, shape and function and have become vestigial. So such a type of changes can be explained under retrogressive. Another example is monocots have been evolved from herbaceous types of plants. Those also can be considered as one of the best example for retrogressive evolution. Means whatever the dominant characters exhibited by the ancestors, those have been decreased in the size and the characteristic feature or the dominancy in the later generations. Mutations led to new varieties. Yes, mutations means sudden changes basing on the requirement by the organism. Here, Ancon sheep, we can take Ancon sheep basically are short-legged sheep that are unable to cross the fences. But in a nature, when a predator has come, then if that is not having any escaping characteristic feature in its body, it will be prone to death. So slowly the organism has showed some of the mutations inside its body, and in the course of evolution the long-legged sheep has been raised. Means not that much long, little bit than the Ancon sheep sized legs. Next, mutations also led to arising of hornless cattle. Yes, hornless cattle have been arised because of mutations. Next, some of the plants in course of evolution has shown mutations to exist and survive in the nature. That can be because of the availability of the food material, water, minerals, and also to escape from the predators. For suppose we can take the auxiliary bud has been modified into thorn-like structures in bougainvillea. One of the best example to explain this hybrid or mutated plants, we can say. Hybrid or mutated plants. Next, mutation also led to arising of hairless cats. So these are the few examples and salient features and evidences of Hugo de Vries mutation theory. Still there are some criticisms that are not accepting Hugo de Vries mutation theory. What are those? Hugo de Vries has taken the heterozygous plant, that is evening primrose, to explain his concept. This is just like he has taken the basic postulates given by Mendel. But Mendel has selected the homozygous dominant and homozygous recessive plants as parents, and he has done some of the work, naturally selected work. But here the parents that are selected by Hugo de Vries are from the beginning itself are heterozygous plant. So he couldn't explain what is the difference between those both and why, what will happen if the homozygous type of plants have been taken. Basically, evening primrose are heterozygous. There is no point of homozygous in evening primrose. That is not explained by Hugo de Vries. Second one, mutations are not normal. Yes, mutations are defined as the abnormal type or the sudden chromosomal inheritable changes in the genotypes of the organism. Next one, mutations are retrogressive. They give negative impact or negative result. So what are the criticisms in the sense? Mutations are retrogressive. Retrogressive in the sense, here these are considered as the negative results or the negative characters in the evolution, and those are removed by the nature. But he explained that how the progressive evolution has happened, in the same way retrogressive evolution also is happening in the evolution, but that is not accepted by the later scientists. Next one, he did not explain a role of nature. Darwin has linked up the development of the organism or progressive evolution of the organism with that of natural selection by the nature. Even Lamarck also has given little bit idea about the existence and the development of long-necked giraffes by linking up with that of nature and the natural selection by the nature. But Hugo de Vries did not explain at any point the role of nature. So these are considered as some of the criticisms. Hugo de Vries did not give some of the points regarding the role of nature, etc. But Hugo de Vries is the person who has given the best idea of genetic involvement in the course of evolution. So this is about mutation theory of evolution given by Hugo de Vries. Next theory is modern theory of evolution. It is also called as Neo-Darwinism. It is also called as synthetic theory of evolution. So this is not the theory that is given by one particular scientist. Basically, it is a combination of the Darwinism theory given by Darwin and also the theory, modern theory given by mutated theory given by Hugo de Vries. So by mixing the theories of mutation theory by Hugo de Vries and Darwinism, this modern theory of evolution was framed out. So it is mixed theory of mutations and Darwinism. What are the postulates given and who gave these postulates? It is not the theory given by one particular person. Many scientists have been involved in giving this theory. Some of them are Ernest Mayr, next Fischer, another scientist is Haldane. A few more scientists also involved in this, means giving out the modern theory of evolution. So another person is Haldane. So there are many other scientists more than this, so we'll write etc. So this theory is given by many number of scientists. What are the postulates given? They said that this modern theory is based on, means it is explaining about the genetic variations, isolation of the organisms in different habitats, and also the natural selection that is done by the nature for selecting the dominant featured organisms. First one, if you see genetic variations, it was said that genetic variations are due to different types of characters. Those are mutations 1, gene recombinations, genetic flow, genetic drift, and non-random mating. Then what is meant by mutations? Is due to 5 different reasons. What are those 5 different? All these. First one, mutation. Mutations are of 2 different types, that is chromosomal mutations and genetic mutations. Are of 2 types. One is chromosomal mutations that show changes in the phenotype of the organism or morphological features of the organism. Second one, genetic mutations. In chromosomal mutations, we see because of the sudden heritable changes, complete structure of the chromosome will be changed, or it will be disappeared, or addition of new chromosomes may be arised. So this is of 2 types again. One is morphological mutations. Second one, numerical mutations. Under morphological mutations, we can see addition or deletion of or duplication of the genes. Here we see duplication of genes inside a chromosome. Here we can take example of bar eye syndrome. For the disorders or the changes in the genes, if any mutation has occurred, then we should not use the term like disease, we should use a term like syndrome. Diseases are because of pathogens like viruses, bacteria, some nematodes, etc. Second one, another type of morphological mutations can be due to deletion of the genes within a chromosome. Here we can take example like thalassemia. Detailed explanation of all these disorders are given in Principles of Inheritance chapter. Next, translocation of genes. Here we can take best known example, that is Down's syndrome. Another one is there, that is inversion type of chromosomal mutation. Here example we can take as hemophilia. So these are few examples of morphological mutations. Then what about numerical mutations? Again it is also of two types. One is euploidy. There will be change in number of sets of chromosomes. Next one, aneuploidy. Here there will be change in number of chromosomes, not in the number of sets of chromosomes. Then what is difference? If you take a gamete, there is only one chromosome inside it. We say the number of sets of chromosomes in gamete, either it can be male gamete or female gamete, is haploid in condition, means only one chromosome, there it is considered as one set. But if you take zygote, zygote are having two number of chromosomes, those two are considered as two sets of chromosomes. So aneuploidy, change in number of chromosomes, not in the sets of chromosomes. Here we can take many examples like trisomy condition and monosomy condition, etc. The syndromes will be Turner's syndrome, Down's syndrome, Klinefelter's syndrome, etc. Those can be explained under numerical mutations. Then what about the genetic mutations? Genetic mutations show the changes in nitrogen bases. There are two types, that is point mutations and frame shift mutations. So genetic mutations are due to change in nitrogen bases. Nitrogen bases I am representing with capital N, small b alphabet. So these are few types of, so we call there such types of mutations as point mutations. So these are few examples for mutations which are of two types, chromosomal, genetic. Next is about genetic recombination. Basically, during, if we recall the meiotic type of division, in the pachytene, we see the crossing over of the homologous chromosomes. There we can tell the genes between the homologous chromosomes have been recombined or mixed or exchanged their genetic material. So that is explained under genetic recombination. So it is seen in pachytene of prophase 1 of meiosis 1. So this genetic recombination also leads to genetic variations, or normally the variations in the living organisms, which are produced in the even in the next generations also. Because of that only, if we compare or if we talk about human beings, there are a lot of variations between the parents and the children phenotypically. Next, about genetic flow. Genetic flow explains us about the migration of the organisms. When organism is migrated from one place to other place, obviously the genes inside it also are considered to be migrated. So this is of two types, that is immigration and emigration of genes. Genetic flow, it means gene migration. What does it mean, gene migration? Are genes getting migrated from one place to another place? It means no. The organism is migrated for its different functions that it has to exhibit in its lifetime. For suppose, flamingos are migrated to one place to another place during their reproductive season. That we can take one best example for migration. Obviously, when a migration happens, then there will be change in the gene pool. What is meant by gene pool? The total genetic material in an population is called as gene pool. So, genetic migration is of two types, that is emigration and immigration. For suppose from a population, if particular number of organisms have been gone out of that population, that is explained under emigration of the population. So when, for suppose, think that there are 100 number of people, out of that 20 number have been migrated to some other area for their next work, then 80 will be remain here. It means that the gene pool has been changed from 100 number to 80 number there. Organisms are removed or eliminated or went out of their population, their original population. Next, what is meant by immigration? If a new type of population or new number of population has entered into the existing population, still there will be change in the gene pool of that population. If new organisms or few organisms, if entered into existing population, so for emigration we can take one example like the seed dispersal. Some types of seeds are there, those are dispersed by the wind and they travel along from one place to another place. So here we can explain seed dispersal. Next, under immigration also, the place where these dispersed seeds have been entered, that can be explained under immigration type of migration. Genetic drift, also called as allelic drift. What is meaning of genetic drift? For suppose if a population is there and few number of organisms from that population have been migrated to some other area and there they have developed their own special type of population and the number. So they are adopted to the new environment. So such type of population and their gene pool is termed as genetic drift. So the genetic drift is given to the population or the migrated population number. So it means the migrated population to new environment and developed a new population there. Because of the climatic conditions or the food habits or the environmental changes, there might be some small variations in the alleles of the genes in that migrated population or in that genetic drift. Basically, genetic drift is a small population. Is a small population. This is also, we will write this non-random mating later. This genetic drift, it is also said as Sewell-Wright effect or Sewell-Wright principle, also termed as Sewell-Wright effect or principle, and it is of two types. So this one is of two types. So what is that? One is founder's effect. Another one is bottleneck effect. What is difference between founder's effect? If genetic drift has transferred all its characters as it is to the offsprings, then such condition is called as founder's effect. There is no change in the gene pool after developing of the population in the new habitat, but sometimes the genetic drift or the population when migrated to new area, because of the non-adaptability to the new environment, some of them may get died or dead. Then what happens? Out of that small genetic drift population, little bit less number of population may be existed. So after some course of time, when some of the organisms are unable to survive for the new changing environment, after their death, whatever the remaining population are there, they will transfer the existed characters to their offsprings. That is called as bottleneck effect. So here, genetic drift inherits or inherited to offsprings as it is. But in case of bottleneck effect, genetic drift decreases sometimes due to new habitat. That remained population will transfer their characters to offsprings. So, survived genetic drift only is inheritable. Survived. So, here there is no place. I will write here. So, survived genetic drift is only inherited. Is only inherited to the next generation. Next we will see about non-random mating, the fifth reason. Before going into non-random mating, what is meant by random mating? Random mating is the type of reproduction that is exhibited by the organism to select the phenotype for its for its reproduction. But in case of non-random mating, organism specifically selects its only one particular type phenotypic organism to produce or to reproduce. So fifth reason for genetic variations is non-random mating. So under non-random mating, organisms are selecting. Here we cannot use the term like organisms. Some organisms we will use. Some organisms are selecting only particular phenotypes for reproduction. For suppose there is an bird called as X. There is an bird called as Y. So now There are other types of organisms also which are phenotypically different from X and Y. Suppose think that there are X, Y and B. A, Y and B. So X is a type showing random mating, means it is able to mate with A type of bird, Y type of bird, B type of bird, so that there will be more increase of population in that random mating organisms. But Y type of bird only will mate with Y type of another bird only. It means that if such type of mating has happened, obviously the number of organisms will be less in the next generations. So this is about genetic variations. Next is about isolation. So isolation, it is of two types. One is geographical isolation and reproductive isolation. Geographical isolation explains us that when two organisms are in two different geographical areas, then there is no chance of mating. No mating between organisms in two different geographical areas. Next, reproductive isolation. Here, organisms are belonging to same geography, but still, because of few reasons, there is no sufficient production of the new offsprings. Then what are the types under reproductive isolation? Those reproductive isolation organisms, so organisms because of that reproductive isolation are also not more in number. That can be because of pre-mating and post-mating changes, or pre-mating isolation or post-mating isolation. Okay. So this pre-mating isolation or the changes that can be due to mechanical. It means that only reproductive organs are different, so that organisms are unable to mate with each other. Reproductive organs are different, so no mating happens between some types of organisms. Next is psychological isolation or psychological reproductive isolation. Here, this is also termed as behavioral isolation also. So it's based on behavior of the organism. Here, mostly the organisms reach a reproductive age at one certain period. So if the organism has not reached the reproductive season or the age, then it will not be having the psychology or the behavior to involve in mating. So that also can be one of the reasons to avoid the type of mating among organisms. Next, coming to seasonal isolation. Organisms like seasonal breeders, they will be laying eggs. For suppose if you take birds, they will be laying eggs only in one particular season. If you take mangoes, we are getting mangoes only during this May or April month. So this is one particular season that most of the organisms are showing their maturity of the reproductive organs or the gametes. Then only the organism will give rise to new offsprings. So here there are changes in maturations of gametes. Next, gametic isolation. Here, gametes are not able to meet or survive in the changing external environment. Some gametes are not able to meet external environment. So because of that also the gametic isolation or the variations may happen and the organisms may not be able to reproduce. Next one, post-mating. So the gametes have been fused. Next, the zygote has to obtain. So this is of three different types. One is the gamete gets matured but fertilization will not happen. That can be because of sterility or any of other genetical changes. So gametes mature and try to fuse but no fertilization. In case of hybrids, gametes will fuse, zygote will form, but zygote is not showing the further development. Zygote will not sustain. Another one, hybrid sterility. Zygote develops into embryo, but still the embryo is not going to be alive or show the next developmental stages. Embryo mostly will be sterile. Means there is no point of further means giving arise to new offsprings or next generations. So this is about isolation. Next one is natural selection. Darwin has proposed that in individuals with different reproductive powers with respect to environment, there are variations. So, in individuals with different reproductive powers, with relation to environment, variations occurred. So he has given some of the explanations. So one of the example is Darwin finches. First he has given regarding the finches which are seen in the Galapagos Islands. There, because of one specific characteristic feature, that is a type of eating the different types of food grains. There one single point is food grains. When there are different types of food grains, the finches have changed their beak shape that was inherited to the next generation. Next, another one is industrial melanism. This was studied by Bernard Kettlewell. So this is studied by Bernard Kettlewell. So industrial melanism is about some colored moths. Previously or initially in Britain, when industrialization was not started, there existed grey color moths. So we will see some of the points regarding that. So first, grey colored moths, they existed. If any variation has happened and black color moths if arised, then they are eaten by birds. But grey color moths survived. During that initial time, lichens also existed on the trees and in the environment. So at this time, when grey colored moths initially existed, black colored moths, if formed by mutation or any variation, they got predated by the birds. So at this time, lichens also existed. Second condition, industrialization has happened. This total industrialization happened in Birmingham area of England. So, so after industrialization, grey moths, some of them have been converted into black color moths. Now, the atmosphere also got deposited by the coal, dust, etc. So, these black colored moths were, they mixed up with that environment. They are not visible to the birds. So, after industrialization, due to coal and soot accumulation, black moths, they survived and grey moths got predated. Next, at this condition, lichens disappeared because of pollution. We know that lichens cannot grow in the polluted area. Lichens got disappeared. Now, when the industrialization has started some of the steps, people have started some of the steps to decrease the pollution, again, equal number of grey moths and black moths existed. But if there is completely removal of pollution there, again, the grey moths can exist there. Again, lichens can start growing in that area. So that is because their variations during the reproductions and the genetical variations are completely linked up with the environmental changes. So whatever the meaning given for natural selection is justified in case of this industrial melanism explained in relation with that of moths. Second one, Darwin has explained about these finches. Basing on the type of food grains, the beak shape has been changed. That directly got inherited to the offspring. Next, before 1940, the DDT was sprayed on the roadsides, etc., or used as one of the disinfectant. Now, when it is heavily, continuously used, then the mosquitoes got adopted. They got a resistance to the DDT. Even the DDT, if it was sprayed also, they did not get died. So what happened? This led to the smooth and flexible outermost coat of the birds, because birds will eat insects, but these insects are already adopted to the new environment and got resistance to the DDT that was sprayed in that area. When this bird has eaten the grains in the DDT sprayed area and the mosquitoes that are resistant to the DDT, then the eggs laid by the birds during that course of period are very flexible and they did not show any fertilization, so that in one particular time the number of birds has been drastically decreased. So it led to the flexible non-fertilized eggs. Laid by birds. Next one, sickle cell anemia. Nature has selected the heterozygous type of gene allele forms in the African people that are resistant or tolerant to the malaria. So sickle cell anemia, nature selected heterozygous allele forms in Africans so that they are resistant to malaria. Malaria fever. So heterozygous in the sense where these alleles are existed? These are existed on the hemoglobin. HB, yes. Their internal genotypic allele paired form will be like this. So when there is the condition of genotypic form like this, then such people are resistant or tolerant to malaria. Next, last one, antibiotic resistant genes. Antibiotic resistant, not genes, it is transformants. Now, so when some of the tests were conducted in the laboratory by incorporating the antibiotic resistant gene into the bacteria or E. coli and cultured in different mediums, then the desired gene got incorporated into the host cell and their next inheritable next generation offsprings showed resistant to the antibiotics. So we can write here, these bacteria are resistant to antibiotics. So these are few examples relating to natural selection. This is about the modern theory of evolution or neo-Darwinism or synthetic theory of evolution given by many number of scientists.